And we're live. So where does one start when discussing not just the influence but also the use of boxing in Bruce Lee's art and philosophy of Jeet Kune? Bruce Lee was born in 1940 in San Francisco. So even though he was born American, he grew up British in Hong Kong. And in the 40s and 50s, boxing was a thing, was such a thing that government leaders even used the renowned fighters to kind of entice patriotic young men into the war effort. All right, so hello everyone, this is Dwight Woods, the Jeet Kune Rebel, and welcome to the I Love Jeet Kune broadcast number 74. This is the one about JKD and its associated disciplines. We're on part 4, and today we're talking about Western boxing. So you know the deal. As you're logging in, say hello, say where you're logging in from, and hit the like button and continue to do so if I say anything that's particularly interesting. All right, so this is one area where I don't think there would be much of an argument or a debate, because Bruce Lee himself famously wrote that his style was going to consist of primarily Wing Chun and fencing and boxing. And there's also the story of Bruce Lee successfully competing in a school-sponsored boxing tournament with absolutely, I'm pretty sure I have this right, with absolutely no previous boxing experience and then somewhat limited Wing Chun skills. So it's safe to say that boxing had an early influence on and played a significant role in Bruce Lee's approach to the fighting arts. So decades later, after being born, now an adult in the United States, Bruce Lee was making copious notes about the fistic arts and reportedly even watching films of great fighters, boxing greats like Muhammad Ali, in the mirror, so that he could see how Ali would move as in a right lead, as a right stancer, right? But in case you think that Bruce Lee adopted Western boxing wholesale without questioning, then I would direct you to pages 37 and 40 of this book here, the Jeet Kune Commentaries on the Martial Way, where Bruce Lee talks about boxing versus real fighting and the pros and cons of boxing. So he says that first, if you put on gloves, then you're dealing in rules and you must know the rules to survive. But in the street, you have more tools in your favor: the kick, the throw, the punch, right? And then when he talks about the pros and cons of Western boxing, he says, so the first pro is efficient footwork, right? So I figured that is as opposed to moving, the karate or gung fu way from stance to stance, right? He opted for more efficient footwork. Says that there was a variety of punches: the jab, the hook, the cross, the uppercut, which I imagine would have been an expansion on Wing Chun's Chun Choi, the vertical fist, and maybe from Choi Le Foot, the Gua Choi or the back fist or what have you. He talks also about the shoulder and the chin in protection, right? And what he called an all-purpose parry and block stance versus the more common karate and kung fu stances where the chin and the shoulder, they don't meet, right, as an added protection vehicle. He talked also about boxing's a pro was conditioning, right? I don't think that the classical styles would have lacked that. I'm pretty sure that even classical karate and classical kung fu did do some type of conditioning in there, even though we'll talk about that a little bit later. And then he talked about infighting, right? I guess as in working in the clinch. And then he talked about head and body movements. So slipping, ducking, bob and weave, the snapback, again, virtually non-existent in the classical arts, right? But then he says one con is that boxing has a set of restrictions and is designed to defeat the adversary in a certain manner. I guess he means as in you couldn't really kick and or grapple in a boxing match, right? Now, obviously, we cannot ignore how much of the Tao of Jeet Kune is, how much there is about boxing, and how much of that boxing comes from Edwin Hazlitt's 1940 book entitled Boxing, right? So in case you don't know about Hazlitt, he was assistant professor of physical education and the boxing coach at the University of Minnesota. And in the acknowledgments of the Tao of Jeet Kune, they list at least 20 pages as being copied from Hazlitt's book. And other books that I've learned were part of Bruce Lee's boxing library are Championship Fighting by Jack Dempsey, the Book of Boxing and Bodybuilding by Rocky Marciano, How to Box by Joe Louis, and then, of course, the U.S. Army Boxing Manual. But we would need, and I know he's watching, Sifu Richard Torres to verify all of that, and then maybe even add to the list of books on boxing. That's the guy that I would turn to, right, for that stuff. So early on in my JKD development, through my own observations, I theorized that perhaps one of the things that Bruce Lee may have loved about boxing was how everything they trained was directed towards one thing, and that was proficiency and performance in the boxing ring, right? So there was road work. So road work is there to provide cardiovascular endurance, leg strength, because a boxer has to have the lungs and the legs to take him through 12 rounds, right? But as they run, boxers would use shuffling footwork and body mechanics and what have you, and they would throw punches and what have you. So they're simultaneously building up rhythm and timing and coordination while they're out there doing the road work for endurance. And then now you come back to the gym and now you engage in shadow boxing. So you have visual feedback on the efficiency of your form, whether it's the form of your techniques or the form of your body mechanics or what have you. But at the same time, you're working on speed and fluidity and still even more conditioning. Just as an aside, many years ago in New York, I was in New York at a Thai boxing seminar with Ajahn Chai, and I was asking him about the best ways to work on things like speed and form and coordination and what have you. And to everything that I asked him, he gave me like one answer: shadow boxing, right? So enough said, right? It does make me wonder though, because as we've discussed before on the broadcast episode about Muay Thai, Bruce Lee didn't think that much of the Muay Thai of Thai boxing hands, right? So I wonder what it would have been like if Bruce Lee and Chai Sirisu had worked together. That might have been, and I wonder what it was like for Sifu Dan when he started working with Ajahn Chai, a Thai boxer who focuses a lot on Western boxing skills, right? Okay, so back to shadow boxing. Keeping in mind the historical context of what we're talking about, the way that boxers trained in the air was radically different from the way that karate and kung fu people trained in the air, in their katas and their forms, because those guys didn't tend to move exactly the same way they would when applying the technique. But boxers move exactly the same way, offensively, defensively, counter-offensively, even when they're shadow boxing, right? So shadow boxing, we move to the heavy bag. So the heavy bag helps to develop like penetrative power. How to put the body into it, how to put get the hip into it, as Bruce Lee would say, how to add heaviness, right, in your striking. Then focus mitt work. So I think it's in Sifu Inasano's Art and Philosophy book that he says that the focus mitts was an idea that Bruce Lee borrowed from the British boxers, right? And again, we're working speed, coordination, spatial relationship, because we're working with a live, moving partner or opponent even, right? A focus mitt aside, Cass Magda, my JKD senior, he wrote an article. I can't find it anywhere. If anybody gets to Cass, you know, maybe he can tell us what the article was. But it was about the focus mitts, and he called it kind of like a martial arts science laboratory, right? The use of the focus mitt, because the use of the focus mitt in JKD is limited only by one's like creativity and imagination, right? And also, in the early days, my understanding is that Sifu Dan used to have to pack this huge bag of focus mitts when he would travel on seminar, because unlike today, you know, 30, 40 years ago, focus mitts were not found in every martial arts school. So he used to have to take the focus mitts out to wherever it is that he was conducting the seminar, right? I don't have the picture here, but there is a picture in the Art and Philosophy book of what they call the shelf of focus mitts. And I was talking with Sifu Nick Faruqi the other day, and I was telling him that in 1983, my first time with Sifu Dan, on the Sunday evening before the official Monday start of the camp, Tim Tackett just goes, you know, we're sitting around talking, and Tim Tackett is like, this is boring. And so he drags out the duffel bag full of focus mitts, and we go in a room and we have like an impromptu Jun Fan kickboxing session, right? Okay, so we got road work, shadow boxing, heavy bag, focus mitts, and then what? Actual sparring, right? The ultimate testing ground for JKD, the crucible in which true fighting skill is created or acquired. So again, open your mind, let your mind wander to what Inosanto may have experienced doing all this boxing research and development with Bruce Lee. You know, the focus mitt stuff, the use of the naval headgear, right? The full contact sparring and what have you. So all that we just talked about. But at the same time, investigating boxing with his Filipino martial art instructors. In fact, just yesterday, Guy Chase posted about Filipino panantukan, and it was a kind of a what do you call it? A vintage video of Lucky Lucay and Ben Lorgusa talking about the Filipino empty hands, right? So you know, so in a sense, he's got Bruce Lee and boxing, Filipino martial art and boxing, then Ajahn Chai in 1978, a Thai boxer who focuses on Western boxing hands, right? Then maybe even a couple years after that when Salem Ashley comes along with Boxe Francaise, because there is the box portion, right, of Savate, and then maybe even Yuri Nakamura and their approach to boxing in Shudo, right? So there's just so much to the whole boxing thing in the JKD. And I would call your attention, if you guys have never seen this book, if you don't have this, because this is not, I guess this might not be one of the more popular Inosanto books, but I think you can still find it online. But they have a section in here on all the different pieces. I always mess up when I try to show you stuff, right? But the chapters are on, let me see if I can get the chapters and show that to you. Yeah, so okay, so here's the contents, right? So the heavy bag, the kick shield, top and bottom, right? The speed bag, the focus glove, right? All that stuff. So there's just a ton of stuff. I can't flip pages backwards, right? But there's just a ton of stuff in there about this, right? Okay, so as I mentioned before, when I finish this series on JKD and its associated disciplines, then I'll produce a video series that kind of goes back over everything that we talked about and plows through it, and we end up with the video version of everything that we discussed. So if you want to get on the notification list for when that video is ready, just send me an email to jkdrebel@gmail.com. Right? Okay? And I think that's it for today. So feel free, share, like, comment, ask me questions. I'll go through everything after posting. Sign up for notifications for when we go live here on Facebook, and then when we put the final edit videos up on the YouTube and for both for the broadcast and the dialogues. Follow me on Twitter at Dwight Woods and on Instagram at Dwight D Woods. Coming up on Friday the 26th, I still have to confirm the time, but the JKD Dialogues episode, I forget what episode that is, but it will be with Michael Van Beek of Focus Counter Violence in Indiana, right? But we don't have the time yet, but just keep your eyes out for that. Today's a yellow day, all right? So there we go. All right, and I'll see you back here next week, same time for another issue of the I Love Jeet Kune Do broadcast. This is Dwight Woods, the Jeet Kune Do Rebel, signing off. Enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.